Good morning, my name is Vittoria and today I'm going to show you the two main projects about Carnival from Unit 1 of my MA. Project 1 consists of an edited collection of visual material that I have divided in three main categories. The first one is historical sources, then modern and contemporary interpretations, and finally today's Carnival documentations. This collection features both personal and other artists' works. The historical sources section features works that portray how Carnival was intended in the past. For example, this painting from the Renaissance times uses allegorical representation to portray the opposition between Carnival, on the left with peasants, and Christian Lent, on the right with nuns and priests. This painting, which is more recent as it was done in the 19th century by Giovanni Signorini, depicts a traditional Italian piazza during Carnival. Thanks to this very much detailed painting, I was able to study the traditional costumes in Italian Carnival. Another relevant artist was Francesco Guardi from the 18th century, whose practice was mostly focused on depicting Venetian sumptuous lifestyle. It is common to see many traditional masks in his paintings, such as La Bauta, which was so popular that it was used all time of the year as a disguise, for example to go to the casino, here shown. The importance of La Bauta inspired me to create some lithoprints. These ones in particular were made by combining some collage bits to suggest the idea of playfulness that is an inherent part of Carnival. Considering more modern artists, I've also been looking at posters to see how graphic designers have interpreted this theme in the past. Here, for example, you can see the difference between how Carnival was portrayed in the Belle Époque on the left side and during the 60s and the modernist period on the right side. I very much like this painting by Pavel Filonov called Pancake Tuesday, which is traditionally considered the day before the start of Lent, so the last day of Carnival. I found it very interesting because it seemed really graphic, especially the faces that reminded me of masks. I loved this watercolor collection by illustrator Lou Benesch. She mixed two themes, the sea and Carnival, to represent very accurate and charismatic dresses that I very much liked. Along pictorial work, I found photography an inspiring source. For example, this picture by Kudelka was really interesting because it transmits the contrast between the comic side of Carnival and the seriousness of the normal days of work. Apart from artistic work, I've been looking at proper documentation on Carnival around the world, which are really useful for me to understand how it takes place in various countries. For example, these photographs I found show how Carnival is celebrated in Notting Hill in London. From some photographs in particular, I was then inspired to create a couple of linoprints during the workshops at uni, portraying the characters that I found most iconic. From another book I found at the library, I also had proper documentation on the contemporary Venice Carnival, and I could see how the costumes had developed from the past. This is the woodcut I printed, inspired by one of these costumes. As you can see, my last three works I just showed you are all portraits, as this subject has always been a constant in my illustration practice. Other than portraits, I've also experimented with other subjects and other techniques. For example, these two are posters I made combining scanned images with foam paper printing, which created a varied and colorful patterns. Another interesting work I made is this map, which explains both with images and words the key topics I found on the theme of Carnival, and it constituted for me a sort of manifesto of my own research. I've also experimented with collage, inspired by the quirky costumes I've seen from the sources collected. During my research, I noticed there was a common theme emerging. In some of these works, Carnival is sometimes associated with political messages and social struggles. For example, in this painting by American artist from the 19th century Winslow Homer, we can see an enslaved black man with an improvised Carnival costume, as if he's trying to adapt to the dominant white culture. I've personally interpreted it as a painting about colonization, slavery, and cultural imposition. Another relevant work is Carnival of Mexican Life by artist Diego Rivera, which is an allegorical painting on Mexico's social and political struggle. I think the term carnival in the title is significant because it is used as a way to ridicule the dictator in the first panel, as well as describing the variety of Mexican society. I found this social and political aspect quite interesting because it is not a usual topic when you think about carnival, so I decided to explore it more for my project too. The development of Project 2 can be divided in 5 main steps that I will now show you. Initially, I researched more on Carnival's social connotations. I started with an essay by Umberto Eco about Carnival as an opposition to the dominant hierarchy. Then I've looked at contemporary examples of Carnival used as means to communicate a political idea, like Extinction Rebellion, which uses masquerade to raise awareness on climate change. Andrew Robinson's article, Carnival Against Capital, Carnival Against Power, clearly explains the effectiveness of Carnival as an anti-capitalist protest tool. I then decided to base my project too on this article and in particular on a specific quotation. During Carnival, rank is abolished and everyone is equal. Meanwhile, I was also looking at some illustrators and artists for inspiration, like Miroslav Sasek and his DC series, or Fernando Covello's blocky illustrations, ornate kitsch collages, and even Paul Klee's painting Carnival in the Snow, which features colorful patterns. Then I started narrowing down the ideas for my illustration through the use of mind maps and drawings in my sketchbook. Then I experimented with drawings, mock-ups, collage, and even lithoprints to create the perfect composition. Finally, I created the image with a composition of digital and analog media. I feel overall satisfied with the project because I think the illustration clearly explains my message. And also, I was able to do so through both symbolic and decorative means. For my major project, I would like to focus on costumes and masks because I think that is the aspect that I enjoyed most from my research. Besides, I think this topic goes hand in hand with my passion for portrait illustration. I need to firstly do some research and find a narrative and a relevant content to communicate. At the same time, I will focus on experimenting with a few techniques I encountered in this unit, like linoprint, woodcut and collage, but I would also like to explore screen print as well. Finally, I don't know in which format my outcome will be yet, but I'd love to make a kind of publication that has some interaction with the audience, so maybe a pop-up book or something similar. I hope this presentation has been sufficiently informative on my processes, inquiry and practice, and I thank you for your attention.